Morning, everybody. Starting a little later today, 8:27 a.m., April 23rd. Welcome to my channel. Yesterday, interesting day. Gapped up, and actually, did we gap up yesterday? Maybe I'm incorrectly saying that. We did not gap up. So we didn't gap up. I'm sorry. We opened, and then basically the market was so strong. Okay, they didn't gap up. We basically opened up way higher. Now, gapped up in futures doesn't count above the close. It's above the previous day's high. In the spine, the QQQ, you judge that by the close. So I'm speaking futures wise, but it was a big move up. Stocks were very bullish, very strong, very strong. Surprisingly, early on, tech and semis were not very strong. Okay, just take a look at the internals here. All right, everything green, right? You could see from the beginning of the day, all over zero, all very bullish. The breadth, the ADD, okay, 500 stocks, 485. This was at 490 something at one point. That means pretty much the whole S&P 500 was higher than the close from the previous day. Look at the NQ 100. 101 stocks were up, even though that says 100. That's every stock was up in the Nasdaq 100. Then you have the breadth here of the NYSE exchange, 2,177 stocks advancing, and the Nasdaq exchange, 2,589 stocks advancing. And then these Valdez is basically buying volume going into up stocks versus down stocks, 7-to-1 ratio. In the NYSE, 7-to-1 in the Nasdaq. Okay, very bullish readings. Okay, I had a nice long yesterday. I went long on SPY, maybe about 20 minutes into the market. I think my entry was something like 521.45 or something like that. I believe that was the entry. Nice 200 and something plus percent winner. With the help, with the help of the Secretary of Treasury saying we need to de-escalation. There's going to be China de-escalation. This is unattainable, I believe he was saying. That pushed the markets higher. Then the markets pulled back, probably anticipation for Tesla. But then Trump was talking, and he was saying that, oh, these tariffs are going to be taken away eventually from China, not all of them, and said, I have no intention of firing Powell. That made the 6 o'clock open for futures gap up. And we've been riding that ever since. So this is what I was talking about yesterday. Okay, I was talking about this yesterday, saying that I feel like we're bottoming out. Okay, even though the day before we sold off, but we took that back already in the morning. And I was saying I feel like we're bottoming here, right? And I'm not telling you I'm some wizard. I'm just saying from watching the markets a lot, you could just feel it. Just felt like we're bottoming. It just felt that way. Okay, and all it needed was a little fuel from a news catalyst, right? Sentiment is so negative, you just need that little spark from positive news, right? I'm not saying we go to all-time highs right now, but this was due. Okay, this was very much due. I believe a lot of negative news is already baked into the market. It's priced in, right? Something else has to come about in order for this market, I feel, to take a next move lower. Will that happen? I don't know, right? You never know these news catalysts, okay? But that's what's going on in the markets. A little long-winded explanation there. Thought I would tell you guys that. And welcome to my channel. My name is Steven Gonzalez. I use market profile, volume profile to find structure in the markets along with supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That is my edge. That is the way I look at the markets. I hope to share that wisdom and experience with you. Now, hopefully, you join me every morning, and I do this usually around 8, 10 a.m., but just say every morning. Join me. Give you the market news, economic calendar, leaders and the laggards, just the overall story of the market. Okay, the overall story. My job isn't really to teach you how to trade, it's to basically how to look at the markets, okay, and look at price structure and just get a general feel who's in control. Okay, that's really the goal here. All right, and hopefully you enjoy my analysis. And of course, you can smash the like button. You could wait to the end. That is totally fine. But right now, what I want to do is I want to get right into the markets, right into futures. Okay, let's do that. Of course, we had some earnings coming after the close with Tesla, Intuitive Surgical, and Phase, SAP Capital One. And this morning, we had Boeing, AT&T, Vertiv, Nextera Energy, Philip Morris, GE Vernova. Okay, and we'll go over that. Well, we'll not go over it. We'll see some of the results. Pretty happy with some of them. I own some of those stocks. So let's look at futures. And we have Ethereum moving. Now look at the Nasdaq's up almost 3%. Russell up 2.62. Bitcoin up 2.53. ES up 2.47. The Dow up 1.85. Okay, 30-year bonds are being bought. That up 1.70%. Okay, that should send yields lower. The dollar is up 0.222. Silver's flat. Crude is down. Crude is down 1.30. I believe for new sanctions on Iran. 10-year yield, look at that, down 2.26%. Gold down 2.49. Gold's pulling back. The VIX is now under 30 at 28. It's down 8.21%. Let's move on to the Max 7 Plus here. Okay, Tesla reported earnings. They actually weren't that good. However, what happened was Elon Musk said he's going to be pulling away from Doge and basically going back, stepping away from that government role. So that's pretty bullish for the stock. Meta's up 5.56%. Actually nibbled on Meta at around 480 the other day, and that's just skyrocketed from there. Nvidia's up 5.47%. A lot of this is probably because Trump said about China. We'll get into that. He just basically was saying, "Oh, these tariffs aren't going to be this high forever. We're in discussions, and they'll be a lot less than this in the future, but they're not going to be zero." But so basically, that's going to juice the markets back, right? Look at these numbers: 5.54%, 5.47. Boeing had earnings 5.03. AMD's up 4.72. Broadcom up 4.70. Coinbase up 4.16. Apple's up 3.36. GE up 2.68. Microsoft up 2.68. JP Morgan up 2.51. Google's up 2.49. They report earnings this week. Eli Lilly up 2.17. Berkshire Hathaway 1.20. And Netflix, the laggard, up 1%, which is not much of a laggard. All right. That is that. Now look at sectors. This is your guts of the market here. Let's look at it. Always semis seems to be a risk on, risk off indicator. And semiconductors are up 4.22%. Followed by technology, which encompasses semiconductors, up 3.43%. Followed by discretionary, up 3.21%. Industrials up almost 2%. Financials up almost 2%. Communications up 1.8%. Energy up 1.13%. The laggard staples, but it's up. Right? There is no laggard today. Okay. With the markets pushing up yesterday and gap up, it's just juice markets right now, and it's going to be a lot of short covering. Okay. Now, let's get into the 1 hour charts. I just want to show you guys certain things which gave me confidence in to go along yesterday. Give me a sec here while I pull that up. This will just be an hourly chart. Okay. I'm just going to show you what I showed yesterday. Okay. Now, important things that happened in this market. Okay. Now, we had this downtrend line. You see this downtrend line? Right? Well, what did we do? This is last week's lows. We broke that, closed above it, the trend line, right? Broke that trend line right there, And then it was all about this 184, I'm sorry, 53.25, which now is ultimate balance. Yesterday it wasn't, but now it is. This level was problems, right? You could see it just stopped the market. However, we just gapped up above that. That's what you would call an exhaustion gap, right? Look at all this overhead supply here that we are now above. So if you were short up in here, you're not liking this, okay? And I feel like we're just going to get a short cover rally now, right? Now, what else in this chart that's important, right? I put an anchored view up from this low, and this pretty much, you know, it didn't really get tested, but I just want to show you that that's there. Now, what I did is throw a trend line on from this move up. You can see we got lower highs, and we're continuing to move up. Now, what we're doing now is we're gapping up into this gap and over the gap. So this is ultimate balance. Huge moves happen, and then when you gap up above all this price action, that's no bueno for the shorts. Okay. And of course, this move down, look at that orderly down. That's orderly selling. Boom, 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 boom. That's not very good structure. What did we do? We took that back. We pulled back and then ripped up and held here, and now we're gapping up. All you needed was some fuel, and that's what we got. Okay? Moving on. Moving on. Give me 1 second here. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I talked to my daughter about something. Now that we just went over that, right? Let's go over the economic calendar, news. All right, we'll settle right here on the economic calendar. So today, what do we have? 30-year mortgage came out. Look at that. It was higher than the previous. Okay. And we have more Fed speak today. Fed Beth at 9 a.m., Fed Goolsbee at 9 a.m., Fed Waller at 9:35. Then you have PMI numbers here. Okay. That's at 9:45. So I'm probably going to just relax until after 10 a.m. You got new home sales at 10 a.m. Then you got crude inventory. So that's the calendar for today. We want to look at some earnings. All right. We know Tesla, Intuitive Surgical, Enphase reported, SAP, Capital One. Okay. Before the open today, Boeing, AT&T, Vertiv, NextEra Energy, Philip Morris, GE Vernova. Okay. After the close today, we have IBM, ServiceNow, Chipotle, Newmont, Texas Instruments, Lam Research, Las Vegas Sands. That's after the close. Before the open tomorrow, American Airlines, Freeport McMoran, Nokia, Southwest, Merck, PepsiCo, Nasdaq, Valero, Union Pacific. Okay, so this is a pretty good week of earnings. Moving on to news. All right, let's look at some news. Trump says he has no plans to fire Fed Powell. Market jumps. Talked about that, right? Musk facing criticism and falling Tesla sales to cut back Doge work. I talked about that with you, right? Apple fined 570 million and Meta 228 million for breach of EU law. That doesn't matter right now, obviously, right? U.S. auto industry warns auto parts tariffs will hike prices and cut sales. Uh, Preview: AI boom under the threat from tariffs, global economic turmoil. Corporate America's artificial intelligence investment frenzy has shrugged off fears of slow returns and doubts fueled by AI models built cheaply by China's DeepSeek. But a global trade war started by Trump administration threats to stall boom across energies from energy to software. Okay, let's look at oil right here. Let's just read the whole thing. Stock index futures surged and the dollar steady, pushing gold prices lower. After President Donald Trump backed off of his threats to file Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and hinted at lower tariffs in China. In Europe, shares climbed, boosted by strong earnings from software makers SAP. Asian stock markets also gained from Japan's Nikkei, hitting a three-week closing high as investors scooped up technology and auto shares. Hong Kong shares rose, tracking global peers amid optimism over the potential de-escalation in Sino-US trade tensions. Oil prices jumped more than 1% as investors weighed a fresh round of U.S. sanctions on Iran and a drop in U.S. crude stocks. On the econ front, investors will look out for S&P Global Manufacturing Services and Composite PMIs for April. Okay, let's see AT&T, the U.S. wireless carrier, beat Wall Street estimates for wireless subscriber additions in the first quarter on Wednesday. Okay. Let's see Capital One, the consumer lender, reported a rise in first quarter profit on Tuesday as the firm helped by higher income from interest payments on their credit card debt. All right, let's see Enphase. The solar inverter maker on Tuesday missed analyst estimates for fourth quarter profit, hit by softening U.S. demand. Let's look out. What else? ConocoPhillips, U.S. oil and gas producer, plans to cut staff, the company said on Tuesday. All right. Intel Corp, the chip maker, set to unveil plans this week to slash more than 20% of its workforce. Snap, Florida sued Snap, the owner of photo sharing app Snapchat, on Tuesday, accusing of illegally employing features that addict children, opening accounts for children age 13 and younger. Let's see, Alphabet, Bernstein cuts target price from 200 to 65. Amazon, Tesla Advisory Group cuts target price 235 from 275. Tesla cuts target price 330 from 388. Verizon, Scotiabank raises target price to 49 from 48.50. Okay. Let's see if I didn't cover anything here. Just talked about the Tesla, Intel, AT&T. Let's see, Boston Scientific stock gained 8.6 as the medical device maker reported first quarter earnings and revenue that surpassed expectations. For Lamar, stock rose 4.2% as the tobacco giant posted a solid first quarter report. GE Vernova stock soared 6.5 after the energy equipment maker reported first quarter earnings and revenue that beat analysts' expectations. I'm liking that. I'm a holder of that stock. Enphase and Energy we already talked about. All right. Let's look at the juice, but you know what? There's nothing here to see in the juice. We're going to get right into daily charts. I want to keep this moving at a later start today. So let's look at dailies. All right, let's look at these markets, right? So now, remember, we came to this low, right? So we had a sell-off, a gap down sell-off. This is last week's lows, okay? So we had that little sell-off. Now, the next day, what do? Open up right at last week's lows and drive higher, filling this gap, going up to the 90-MA daily, right? So that's what we did just in the market hours, right? Then, obviously, Trump, all the stuff I talked about, made the market jump, right? So this is going to become a swing low, this price. And I thought about putting bullish positions on, but I was like, Tesla's reporting. I didn't do anything, right? Obviously, that would be have been a good play now. So anyway, where are we at now? We closed at 527. We're at 540.40. Okay, 540.40. We are all the way, ironically, right up against the 20-day simple moving average. We're actually over that. And there's that 2024 anchored VWAP. Okay, 2024 anchored VWAP. It's right there. We're almost at last week's highs. So check that out, right? Beginning of the week, what did you think? Oh boy, right? Now, we're already at the highs from last week. What's the next move? I don't know. You got a downtrend line here. We'll have to see. Can we break through basically this 547 level? That's been resistance. Trend line here. You got last month's high lows here. Okay, that's a big important level, 2020, 24. 2024 anchor VWAP's right here, that yellow line. Okay, let's look at futures real quick and just see the view, right? You can see right here last week's lows. Look at the gap up in futures, right? Over the 90 EMA daily, over the 20-day simple moving average, heading towards the 50. No, that's not the 50. Don't worry about this. This I don't. This is anchor VWAPs that are just on my chart from before. It really doesn't apply to here. Okay, but you're looking at, we're coming right at last week's highs. There's last month's lows around 55.36. If we can break that and hold that, maybe we get a push up to the 50. I don't know. Have to see. Okay. QQQ. Okay. Same kind of thing. Opened at last week's lows. Hit the 90 EMA daily. Waiting for Tesla earnings most likely. Okay. Filled this gap. Now, what is, we're waiting, and obviously if we close at 44, we are at 458 called 35. 458.35. Actually, this is pretty bullish in structure, is above last month's lows. Last month's lows. Now, I didn't show you, I forgot to show you the month to date VWAP. We are over that now. So that just means that all sellers from the beginning of the month are underwater. We closed above that yesterday. All right, that level in the spot ES was about 53.14. So that's another just nice thing to see, is that you're over that. Now we're most likely in positive gamma as well. Okay, let's look at the Nasdaq. All right, so you can see here we're right against last month's lows in futures. Okay, right here, very key, over the 20-day moving average. Right, I think a key resistance area here is like anywhere from 193.88 to 192.70 to 192.70. Okay, you can see the gap up at 6 o'clock. This area is overhead supply. If you break and hold this, what do? Maybe test the 50. Okay, that's your look at daily charts. Okay, let's go to that bond market, a triple headed monster. Let's see what we're doing here, because yields have fallen. Okay, look at that swing high. That was when that basis trade from hedge funds, they had to cover their positions. Okay, it caused a spike in yields. That was probably temporary, right? And then we pulled back, we went up again, and now we're back down. Where are we? Right at the 2024 anchor VWAP and 20-day simple moving average. Okay, so if we start to move down, this is very poor structure. This rip up, you could really, really go down. Okay, let's look at the dollar. That dollar is at a very low level. Got a bump here. We're still under 100. We're at 99. Okay, so dollar generally, like I said, is good for equities. However, you can look at that both ways. I keep saying this, but we're the world's reserve currency, all right? America, the U.S. dollar. Some people are saying that's being threatened when this goes lower, right? So just pay attention to that. Be aware of that. Okay, VIX, 30 days out of fear. Look at what's happening. Remember, I talked about this yesterday. I said we're holding in this range of like 35 to 30 VIX. Well, we're under that. We're at 27 right now. This is last week's lows. So if we can continue to fall, expect the market to push up a little bit. Okay. And again, what I'm saying is I don't believe we're going to all-time highs. We could test these lows that we put in early, again, but you need some type of bounce, some type of rally. The sentiment, everything's so negative. Okay, and look, you just got a little news and you're pushing. Right, shorts are going to really be in pain today. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the market profile, volume profile. Let me bring that up. Already. So let's look at our futures market. Let's look at yesterday's action. All right. So yesterday, it opened up right below last week's lows, right? And all the shorts could do was that. And then it was just a rip, rip, rip up with that news. And then this area, if you found acceptance above it, that was very bullish. But however, it took a sell off, and then we moved back up, waiting for Tesla, right? And then in between 5 and 6 is when Trump said, "I'm not firing Powell, and I don't plan to do any higher for China, and they're going to go lower on tariffs." Then you get this big gap up at 6 o'clock, right? That's not usually how futures work in the overnight, that you get these gap ups like this. You open up, gapped up, right? That's what happened, okay? Now, if you're looking at a profile, obviously you got the gap here, right? This doesn't really help us too much right now, right? But what I do know is, let's just call 53, let's call it in the middle, 5320 to 5300, this area now is the most traded price of the week, the most traded price of the last month. Anytime you move away from this, it's very bullish. Okay, you get big moves. This is not surprising. Okay, because like I said before, I'm just trying to say, all of these days of shorts, all of these days of shorts are under water. Under water. Okay. And just to reiterate the anchor VWAP right there, we are now green, and we are now buyers are in control of the month. That's basically what it tells us. Buyers are in control of the month. Even though April started out bearish, right? Sellers were in control until right here, the market settled at ultimate balance and a month-to-day VWAP, and then you get the gap up. Woof, right? This is very bullish here. Remember, not bullish like all-time high bullish, just bullish for right now. Okay? So you got the big gap up, 53.39 is your gap fill. Okay, 53.39. Now, like I said, this is more or less an exhaustion gap. You're gapping up above so many days that were short. Okay, you're gapping up through an existing gap. Okay, so that's not even right. This is calling this the midpoint. It's really not, because this is a gap. Midpoint somewhere here. Okay, so honestly, you got so many demand zones here. Okay, and how we're going to work this is over here, right? Let's get this out of the way. Big level, 40, 50, let's call it, well, let's just call it 40, 54.96 to 54 to 5500. Okay, right here. This is actually good because you have this previous weekly highs right here. Okay, so this area is supply. That's a key area to look at. You still have a gap above us here. And actually what I'm going to do is push this down so we can really see what's above us. That's a big gap above. I'm not sure if you can see all that. There we go. There we go. Let's redo my levels. Okay, so there's that 5,500 last week's highs right here with supply. You could see from the past, we could not break that level. Okay, now we're gapping up. There's your gap fill, 53.39. We have demand zone here. Okay, we have another one here. All right, so we're basically 100% net long in the overnight because it opened down here. Now remember, futures close, all right, the way I have it, 4:15, and then I go to 5 o'clock. This is 4:15 to 5 o'clock. Then 6 o'clock, we opened here. Okay, so you can see the market's driving. This is not a surprise. Okay, so if this market keeps driving, gap and go, what I'm going to look for is any kind of push into the supply and a pullback into this demand. Okay, let's back this up and we'll do ES scenarios. Okay, let's just get into it. We're going to start with the bullish scenario here. Okay, so right now, like I said, 100% net long, gapping up into a gap, and we have this big area here with supply and resistance of last week's highs. Okay, what I would look for is some type of push up here, lower high, pull back into this area. All right, this is demand. See what we do. Do we come back and the market can finally go and try to break this level 5,500 and go to the end of this supply zone? Now the large gap above us here is an unfilled gap. Okay, so that level starts us at 55.40. I don't know if we can start ripping all the way up there. I don't know. Okay, we just have to see. All right, now another scenario I would look for obviously is the next move down to here. This is the overnight most traded price right here, and this is a demand zone. If this holds, you could try to push up and try to break this level again. Okay, now the one other thing I will leave here, this could be a bear trap, is if we start trying to fill the gap and you get support in the gap, that's also bullish. So that's the bullish scenario. Okay, now if we're going to talk about the bear side, which I'm probably not really a fan of any short today, just I'd rather go with strength, right? Bear side, okay, what can we do? Push all the way into this supply zone, right? Resistance from the past, last week's highs. If we get lower highs here and the market starts to go, we're going to go down to probably this demand zone. If you get farther, right, you start to test. This is technically not overnight lows, but it's the gap up, and you could start ripping back, and you probably land around the 54.14 ultimate balance. This market really has to change on a dime to do that. Some negative news, I would think, that would have to come out in order to do that. Okay, I don't see that happening, but I mean, I don't know what negative news can come out, right? I think Trump and Besant are leaving out these little nuggets and boosting the market, right? So we have to see. All right, I'm not going to have time to do NASDAQ analysis today. All right, just had a late start, and it's kind of the same deal. See the NASDAQ's gapping up as well. All right, moving out of ultimate balance here, but you got the gap up. It's pretty similar. Okay, you don't have that same level that was resistance right up against it like you do in the ES. You do have that confluence high though at around 192.55. That happens to be also up here, the most traded price of the rolling year. So that will be tough to get through. That could be a destination. Okay. All right. So, hope everybody enjoyed that analysis, and you can smash that like button. All right. For me, that'd be much appreciated. Now, hopefully, you guys join me every day, every morning, and give you the lowdown the story of the markets, the market news, economic calendar, leaders and laggards, all that jazz. Okay, and I just gave you long and short trade scenarios. Now today I wasn't able to give you the Nasdaq, but I gave you the ES. Obviously, the ES represents the S&P 500, 500 stocks, right? It's a more broad view of the market. Nasdaq 100 is a little more technology heavy. However, I still gave you the big boy, right? Scenarios. I'm biased long today, unless I see something, but it's pretty much going to be short covering today. I would be shocked if this is just erased, unless there's a negative news catalyst. Okay. Now we do have, remember, reminder, we have 9:45 a.m. news. We have 10 a.m. news. So I'm probably gonna just sit back. Okay. I'm gonna sit back. All right. Everybody, have a great day. Wish everybody luck. No trades are trade. Stay green, and I'll see everybody tomorrow.